Hi, and welcome to another episode of the City of Flagstaff's Recovery Roundtable. My name is Jessica Drum, and I am the Public Affairs Director. And today I am honored to be joined by our City Manager. Greg, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, Jessica. My name is Greg Clifton, and I serve as the City Manager for Flagstaff, and thanks for having me here.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining me. Today, we are going to provide the promised update on the City of Flagstaff's COVID-19 reentry plan. This plan was presented to the Flagstaff City Council on Tuesday night, June 2nd, and the full text of that, or the full recording of that conversation, both including the reentry plan, a discussion with Dr. David Engelthaler of TGen, and the council's subsequent discussion and direction can be found on the city's Facebook page. It's linked below this video, or it's provided below this video, and it's also available on our website if you would like additional information and that full discussion that guided the direction that council gave. So, Greg, I was hoping you could provide an overview of the reentry plan and council's direction for folks.
Indeed, and thank you. And I would encourage people to hop on that link that you made reference to, because it was a very engaged and very well-informed discussion on Tuesday with Dr. Engelthaler, and it was so good to have him with us because he has a wealth of information on this and gave some very good guidance to the council. So I would start by emphasizing that a lot of very good thought has gone into this reentry plan. It originated at the staff level with a team that we assembled, the reentry team, comprised of many folks from throughout the organization. And then, as you pointed out, Jessica, it was advanced to the council on Tuesday. And with the discussion with Dr. Engelthaler and a lot of input, the council did adopt the plan. I want to also point out that the plan, while it's been finalized, it is also predicated upon site-specific facility plans that are still being polished at this time. We, as the large organization that we are, have to be a little bit adaptive to the needs of our specific utilities and buildings, like the library, like the aquaplex and the indoor recreational facilities, City Hall. No two facilities are alike, and so we are tailoring our protocol and guidelines to meet the needs of each one, and hence to meet the needs of the community. With that as a backdrop, I'll speak a little bit to the plan. It's a very simple plan and I think very easy to read, and it will soon be posted on the website once we have the corrective language that council agreed to on Tuesday. So you could expect that to be in front of you fairly quickly. It is a general guidance plan that is based upon 4 phases, first, second, third, and fourth phase. We currently are in the second phase of that plan, and I'll speak more to that in a second. The plan is predicated also upon the CDC guidelines and to some extent the gating criteria out of Washington. It is very heavily based upon employee safety protocol and resources and workplace safety, as you could imagine. And then we also in the plan speak to what procedures or protocol is to be taken when we do have positive tests or exposures by city employees. There have been some of those cases thus far. I'm happy to say that we seem to be doing okay as an organization, but we have had some positive tests within the organization and within our emergency responders as well. And on to the specifics then. I mentioned it's a 4-phase plan. Phase 1, which we were in for part of March and almost the entirety of April. That's the phase where the facilities were all closed to the public. Outdoor sports facilities and park amenities were likewise closed. We continued to operate as an organization across the board, with the exception of a few obvious programs that had to be curtailed because of the closures. The library, for example, there were some temporary furloughs instituted, and the same is true with many of our recreation staff because of the closure of those facilities. But with respect to the organization as a whole, it was business as usual. It was just being performed remotely. with some success, I might add. Most of the meetings have, almost all of the meetings have occurred remotely. There are always some that need to occur in person. I'll illustrate with an example. Some of our building inspections and things like that still had to occur on site, but by and large, almost all of our operations were performed remotely in phase one. We continued essential services in person, as I pointed out. We also really cut back on special events and permits to 10 people or less. So any event that would involve a city facility or city permitting or city sponsorship, we were not participating in those, and if they involve city property, we were not allowing those events if they were greater than 10 people, unless modifications could be made to accommodate the needs for CDC guidelines and social distancing, i.e. the farmers market or the community market that takes place on city property is still operating and functioning quite well, but they are doing it with online purchases through the week, and then it's a pickup service on Sundays. So they have put that into place to avoid any sort of congregation of people. That's a good example of a modified permit. There were a lot of meetings suspended in phase one. The council decided to suspend about half of their meetings, which prompted us at the staff level to put a lot of thought and care into packaging the council agendas to make sure that that we were getting the urgent topics before council as needed. All travel has been suspended and group gatherings suspended as noted. I mentioned earlier we're in phase two, and let me tell you the difference between the two. Between phase one and phase two, we started to open our outdoor park facilities and some of our outdoor courts and outdoor restrooms. So that has happened with some limitations that I want to point out. Within our park facilities, our ramadas remain closed, obviously, to discourage any sort of large congregating of people. We also have opened our visitor center. We did that mostly out of need to accommodate the many visitors who are now coming back into the Flagstaff community. So our visitor center has a lot of information about what is open in the community and around the community. We also have public restrooms there. And so we opened that with very careful measures to, again, promote the CDC guidelines and social distancing. Some of our furloughed staff may be returning to work at this time, but by and large, many who have been furloughed remain furloughed at this time, unfortunately. In phase two, we also really upped our game on the custodial and sanitation services, and we have installed temporary restrooms in the downtown area. I believe there are modular restrooms over at the library right now that are operable. So what lies ahead? Much of the discussion with council last Tuesday talked about phase three and when and how that decision will be made to go into phase three. Let me first describe what phase three will bring, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the criteria by which phase three will happen. Phase three will see us open up most of our city facilities, city hall, libraries, things like that. I want to point out, however, that some of the indoor recreation facilities and the aquaplex will very likely stay closed. Those will open in accordance with their own site-specific plans that I made reference to earlier, and they will open with very careful protocol and procedures in place to ensure things like minimized capacity, increased sanitation, enhanced social distancing and CDC guidelines, possibly reduced hours of operation, and things of the like. So, but by and large, with those exceptions in mind, phase three will see most of the city facilities open back up to the public. That said, there will be limited services, and we certainly will be utilizing safety protocol, having sneeze guards in place and providing for sanitation tables in our lobby areas, discouraging any use or gathering in our lobby areas, but rather just allowing for the transactional business that needs to occur, and then encouraging people to keep distance and be respectful of CDC guidelines. On our end, at the staff level, we will be wearing masks, face masks, when we are dealing with having interaction either with each other in person or with the public. So if in phase 3, when things open up, if there is a person-to-person meeting between staff and public, we will be donning the face mask. We respectfully ask that the public do the same. And if not, we won't mandate that by the public, but what we might do is mandate that we meet remotely rather than face-to-face. All of that is in respect to the protocol and certainly in the interest of safety. And I apologize that my image keeps darkening at times. I'm in a room with a lot of natural sunlight happening, and the computer doesn't quite know what to gauge when it's making an adjustment in the video here. What else about phase 3? We will see the special events and permitting jump from a number from 10 to 50, 50. And so there will be some increased permitting at that point. We will continue to conduct our meetings largely remotely. Organizationally, we will ask our employees to continue to perform services remotely if they can. Even though the facilities will be open, they will not be fully staffed. We will encourage people to work at home when they're able to do so. We'll continue with the restricted travel. And as I noted, we will be wearing masks and taking all kinds of precautions on that. Phase 4, just jumping ahead, and then I'll circle back to the criteria for opening phase 3. Phase 4 basically sees us return to kind of the pre-COVID environment where things are pretty much back to complete normal, if there is such a thing. Buildings will be all open, and we'll be operating mostly in person, and we'll probably start phasing out the PPE requirements in the CDC guidelines. One could assume that phase 4 will likely not occur until such time as the pandemic is past us. We don't know when that happens, but I think it's safe to say that that could be months ahead. I also think it's safe to say that some things will linger even beyond phase 4 in terms of things like possibly keeping some of our meetings remote, because we've seen so much success in doing so. It has become quite efficient to operate in some instances remotely. And that's within staff. That's also with our boards and commissions. And even at the staff or at the council level, I'm sure that council is desirous of getting back at the dais in the chambers. That will certainly be the case in phase 4. So phase 4 again is we are in an environment then of where transmission of the virus is either low or non-existent. So that lies way ahead. Back to the criteria of what prompts us to go to phase 3. This was much of the discussion the other night with council and with Dr. Engelthaler. Rather than rely on any one methodology for going to phase 3, such as number of COVID cases in Flagstaff or percentage of positive tests, the council, upon the advice of Dr. Engenthaler, decided to take a look at the aggregate of all of these things, along with capacity of our medical facilities and our hospital, and also in mind with mindfulness of how the community is responding, and make their decision based upon all of those things considered. So there is no one easy to describe methodology for going to phase 3. Is rather a little more complex, looking at trends and trajectories, and the council will be doing that. We'll be doing that very vigilantly as we go forward. With that said, I will note that as we watch our data and we look at the county's dashboard on this on a daily basis, and we look at the numbers and we look at the percentages of tests that are coming in positive, the city of Flagstaff is still seeing occasional upticks. Lately, it has been a downward trend, but on occasion, and recently would be a good example, there are some upticks. So if we were to have a strict adherence to the gating criteria out of Washington, we still would not have opened up our facilities at this point because we haven't had that 14-day straight line trajectory. What else can I share with you? I think by and large, the community has responded quite well to COVID. We have, as an organization, responded well to it, and we're taking, I think, a very cautious approach pursuant to our mayor's leadership and our council's direction. But I also want to impress upon the community that we are conducting business. We are operating and getting things done. A lot of things are happening as they would even without the pandemic, such as a lot of our capital projects are still in play. And a lot of our services have not been interrupted. Building permits they look like they have without the pandemic. They look like they did a year ago this time. So there's a lot of things where I could suggest it has not been impactful. And then, of course, there are a lot where it has. Tourism and travel has taken a big hit. A lot of our local businesses, same comment. We're looking at the revenues very carefully, but I don't want to drift into that. I know it's another discussion. Jessica, I think at this point, I'll ask you if there are other details you would like me to speak to.
Well, we'll have you back another day to discuss the revenue projections and perhaps our Director of Management Services. But thank you for that comprehensive overview of the reentry plan. And one thing I just want to remind folks of, I know that I think it was quite obvious from Greg's presentation, but what I'd like to point out very directly is that this applies to city facilities and city-owned property. I know we get a lot of questions about privately owned facilities and whether or not the city's reentry plan or the city's or the mayor's emergency declarations apply to those. And at this point, the reentry plan that we've talked about, this is only for city facilities. The city business has continued. Our facilities have been closed to the public, and those site-specific plans, I think, that Greg, that you mentioned, are going to be of particular interest to the community. And so as we incorporate that feedback from council into the documents, we'll make sure we'll share them on social media and make sure that they're just widely available for folks so that they're aware of all of the details that are contained, because I know we get a lot of questions about that. So please know that information is forthcoming very shortly. And I also would like to just point out that we have the reentry plan and council discussed it on Tuesday, and we're incorporating that feedback as we discussed, and that this will be an ongoing discussion. And so you can look for more information both coming out of council through the Recovery Roundtable and through media outlets and our social media channels as council has additional discussions on COVID-19 and the city's response and recovery from it. So this is a really comprehensive document, and I think it does a fantastic job of outlining the path forward for city-owned property and facilities. But please stay tuned, because as I'm sure 3 months ago we would have had a hard time imagining that this is where we are at the beginning of June. I would imagine that the same will be true 3 months from now. So please know that we are actively tracking and monitoring the situation and updating our plans and procedures as is dictated by the situation in Flagstaff and across the country as it applies to our community. So thank you so much, Greg, for taking the time to join me today. And thanks to everybody who took the time to watch. And I will keep you posted as soon as the updated documents are available.
Thank you, Jessica, for this time. And again, a thanks to Dr. Ingolthaler for his great comments the other night. Do access that link if you'd like to revisit that discussion. It was very good. And it was my pleasure. Thank you again for having me.
Thanks.